everyone, I'm Karen, and today I'm going to be making chocolate chip cookies. Got some chocolate chips here. There's just nothing like a chocolate chip cookie fresh from the oven. It really helps you when you're feeling down at the end of a hard day, and some of us have been having a lot of those lately. So yeah, I'm gonna make chocolate chip cookies. First steps to preheat the oven. The recipe says 375. I set mine to 385 because I know that my oven runs a little bit cold. Next step is to sift the dry ingredients. I've got a sifter here, one of these old-fashioned ones. If you've got a fine mesh strainer, that'll work too. Let me reposition this so you can see what's going on the counter. There we go. Okay, so I've got a sheet of wax paper here. This is to catch the dry ingredients as they come out of the sifter. We're going to start with the flour. And we're not going to measure it yet. This is just to sift it and kind of aerate it so that when we do measure it in just a couple of moments, the measurement will be a little bit more consistent. Professional bakers actually measure their dry ingredients by weight because, well, flour can be fluffy or it can be tightly packed. But anyway, just turn the crank. There we go. Now I've got a second sheet of wax paper here. Now we're going to do the actual measuring. Set that down just a moment while I get the measuring cups. There we go. So the recipe calls for 2.5 cups of flour. And this is just all-purpose flour, in case you were wondering. There's 1 cup. Scoop in the second one. Just level it off, nice and even. There's the second cup. And then a 1/2 cup as well. There we go. The extra flour can just go back in the bin. Use that for something else another time. Next is the baking soda. We need a teaspoon of that. Got it here in this little jar that once held, I guess, paprika. I repurposed a lot of my spice bottles to hold other things, so you'll see a few of those. And recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. So the baking soda actually reacts with the brown sugar in the cookie dough to make it rise, to make it more fluffy, so it's not too dense. Let's get that in there. And then 1/2 teaspoon of salt. This is for flavor. You'll notice later that I'm using unsalted butter for this dough. If all you have available is salted butter, I would leave this salt out. Put that in there as well. Now the second sifting not only mixes the ingredients, it also gets rid of any lumps of baking soda that you might have in there. Because trust me, you don't want to bite down on a lump of baking soda in a finished cookie. That's just gross. I've done it before, it's not pleasant. All right, so there are your dry ingredients ready to go. Set those aside for a moment. Now we start on the rest of the dough. First is the butter. This is unsalted butter. We need 1 cup of it, which is 2 sticks. You might notice on this side of the stick of butter, if you've never looked before, that it has these little marks showing you how many tablespoons or how many cups are in the stick of butter, and 1 stick is 1/2 cup. So we're going to need 2 of those. There's 1. And there's the other one. Won't need the wrappers for anything. Now to the butter, we're going to add 2 different types of sugar. First is regular white sugar, or granulated sugar. Goes by a couple different names. Like the flour, you just scoop it in and level it off. Put that in there with the butter. Next is brown sugar. And brown sugar doesn't quite measure the same as other dry ingredients. It has a tendency to clump up on you. So rather than scooping it in, I'm just going to dip the cup, shake it and make sure that there aren't really any pockets of air in there. And then level it off. There we go. And there's that. Seal that back up. Got a wooden spoon for the mixing. Oh, I forgot to mention that this butter has been sitting out overnight, so it's nice and soft and easy to work with. A lot of recipes call for softened butter. Now, you can do this with an electric mixer if you have one, but I'm doing this with a wooden spoon, partly because it gives you a little workout for your arms, and partly to demonstrate that if you don't quite have the best of equipment, you can still create something delicious and worth making. Make sure you scrape down the sides so it's all evenly distributed. Just keep stirring, just keep stirring. There we go. Now if you'll have a look, it's all well mixed and kind of soft and fluffy actually. Next thing to do is add the vanilla. We need 2 teaspoons of vanilla. So there's the first one. I should point out that me measuring the extract over the bowl like this is very, very risky. Make sure if you're doing this that you don't overfill the spoon, because then your cookies are going to taste like way too much vanilla. If you want to prevent that, you can instead get a cup and measure the extract over the cup so that any excess doesn't wind up in the cookie dough. There we go, a couple of drops on the counter there. In it goes. Now, you just stir in that vanilla as well. There we go. Next is the eggs. I'm going to need 2 eggs for this. 1 and 2. These are large eggs, kind most usually used for baking because they're the same size and they're consistent that way. Your eggs may be brown, that's fine. Drop in 1. Let's put that in the compost bin over there. Sorry about that, that wasn't a good shot. There's the second egg. Let's put that aside for a moment. And mix those into the butter and sugar mixture. Now at this point you'll notice that I have some of the butter and sugar mixture kind of sticking to the spoon and to the sides of the bowl, and it's not really mixing in all that evenly. So I'm going to get a rubber spatula, one of these little units. Just scrape that off. And continue mixing. Just make sure it's all nice and smooth. All mixed together. I like that. Looks good. Okay, now it's time for the dry ingredients that we sifted earlier. Just pour those in. I'm going to save the wax paper for the next time we make cookies. Now once you've added the flour, of course you want to make sure that it's well mixed in, but don't continue to mix it too much after that. Because the longer you work the cookie dough with the flour in it, the more the gluten in the flour is going to develop, and the tougher the cookies are going to be eventually. So, there we go. Let's give that another scrape with the spatula there. Looking good so far. It's fun, isn't it? I think so, anyway. Get that all nice and stirred in. Now, for the last part, the chocolate chips. Stir those in. Now, if you wanted to add nuts to your cookies, like walnuts or pecans, something like that, you'd just add them in with the chocolate chips and stir them in, all at the same time. Oh, that's the oven telling us that it's preheated. But I prefer my chocolate chip cookies without any nuts in them. It's just a personal thing. So, there you go. Chocolate chip cookie dough, all ready to use. Thanks for bearing with me. I cleared out the counter and wiped it down, so it's a bit neater now. Also got a cookie sheet and a handy dandy cookie scoop to scoop the dough with. So now we're ready to portion out the cookies. Just take a scoop, level it off, and right down onto the cookie sheet. For these cookies, you don't need to grease the cookie sheet or anything. Just leave a couple of inches between them because they are going to expand a bit as they bake. Your cookie sheet may not have edges on it, like mine does, and that's fine for our purposes. The reason they have that is so that this pan can also be used to make jelly rolls, like those little short cakes that you roll up into a log. Yeah, that's what those are for. Now you may not have a handy dandy cookie scoop like this, in which case you can just pull out some dough with a regular spoon and roll it into a ball with your hands. Just if you do that, make sure and try to make every ball of dough about the same size so that they cook evenly. If they're different sizes, then the small ones will cook faster and the big ones will cook slower, and some will be overdone and some will be underdone, and it's just not a pleasant thing. So try to be as consistent as possible. Almost done here. One last one. There we go. Now, all that's left to do is slide them into the oven. And set a timer for 10 minutes. There we go. Now, while the cookies bake, I'd like to discuss the somewhat controversial topic of whether or not you should eat the raw cookie dough. Now, the food safety experts would want me to tell you that you shouldn't, because this raw cookie dough has raw eggs in it. And there is a chance, if you eat something with raw eggs in it, that you could pick up salmonella poisoning from it. So, if you have a weakened immune system, or if you're at all unsure about where your eggs came from, then you really shouldn't eat the dough. That being said, if you want my personal opinion, I think that life is much too short to deny yourself these small delights. So, if you're so inclined, absolutely eat the cookie dough. Now, I'll be back in a few minutes to check on those cookies when they're done. Try not to eat the whole bowl full, because you want to make more cookies with the rest of them. Alright folks, we've got about a minute left until that first pan of cookies comes out of the oven. So I'd like to show you the setup I have now. I have a couple of hot pads to pull out the pan. Then down here on the counter, I've got a cooling rack set up, and I've got another tray of cookie dough scoops that I scooped while the first tray was baking. I've also got another hot pad set up beneath that sheet so that the hot pan has a place to rest when it comes out of the oven. On top of all that, I've got a spatula to remove the cookies from the cookie sheet. And we've got just a couple of seconds left. There's the timer I set earlier. So, head on over to the oven and have a look at your cookies. Oh, those look good. They look about done too, which is good. Let's get those out and swap the new pan in. Nice and easy. And set the timer for the new pan. Another 10 minutes. Cool. Now while those are baking, let's have a look at the batch that just came out. Bring the pan a little closer so you can have a look. If you look at the top of the cookies, they don't look doughy anymore. They look, well, they look like they're baked. And they're just a little bit golden brown around the edges, but they're not too terribly burned or brown, or, well, they're not overdone, I should say. So after those have been on the pan for just a few seconds to help them set up a little bit, take your spatula and start to carefully scoop them off of there. They're very hot, so they may squish a little bit as you move them. That's all right. They will still be delicious. Now the point of moving them onto the wire rack, well, there's a couple of reasons to do that. One is to help the cookies cool a little bit faster. And the other is to make sure that the bottoms of the cookies don't get soggy. See, the cookie dough has a little bit of moisture in it still that's been turned to steam in the oven. And if you let the cookies sit on the cookie sheet for the entire time the cookies are cooling, that steam will begin to pool at the bottom, and the bottoms of the cookies will get all soggy. You don't want that. So let's just get them onto that wire rack so that air can circulate underneath them and they won't get soggy. That's all there is to it. And now you can start scooping another panful and continue with the rest of the cookie dough that way. But first, let's see if they're cool enough to try. Those are very, very hot still. This is the hard part, waiting for the cookies to cool enough so you can eat one. All right, it's a couple of minutes later now, and the cookies have cooled enough to the point that we can eat them without burning ourselves. Here's Josh, my husband, here to try a cookie with me. Go ahead and pick one out. Sharing is caring, Josh. Also, I'm the one who made the cookies. How are they?
You sure I can't take them all?
Yes, I'm sure.
They're delicious.
That's good. I agree, they are delicious. Nice and soft. So, enjoy your cookies, and remember, you got this. All right, see you next time.